The night sky above the imperial city was always quiet. Stars burned like cold fire, and the empire's banners floated over towers of steel. The people walked in silence, obeying rules, afraid to speak too loud. Laughter was rare here. Jokes were not forbidden, but nobody dared to tell them. Joy was seen as weakness. But one night, the silence broke. A strange sound cut across the airwaves. It started soft, almost like a whisper, then grew louder. At first, people thought it was static from an old channel. But soon, the sound was clear. It was laughter. A human laugh. Not forced, not polite, but raw and free. The sound rolled over the city like thunder. In markets, shopkeepers froze. Soldiers standing guard looked at each other. Even the emperor's tall palace echoed with the strange noise. People leaned from windows, wondering who had dared to broadcast such a thing. The laugh kept growing, layered with strange echoes. It was not just one person. It was hundreds, maybe thousands, woven together into one storm of amusement. Some called it madness, some called it music, but everyone listened. For 7 minutes, the city was trapped. Artillery towers, always ready to fire on command, fell silent. Crews sat frozen, unable to move their hands. Their chests shook. One soldier bit his lip to stay steady, but the sound made him snort, then chuckle, then laugh out loud. His partner followed. The guns stayed quiet. In the palace, Commander Lee stormed into the control room. His face was red with anger. "Where is this coming from?" he shouted. "No signal source, sir," a technician replied, sweat on his forehead. "It's everywhere. It's infecting the channels." "Shut it down," Lee barked, but they could not. The laughter was too strong. It slipped through codes, broke through locked gates, and filled every corner of the city and far away. On a tiny forgotten planet, a young soundsmith named Raffi smiled. His fingers hovered over an old console, lights blinking weakly. Around him, wires hung like vines, and cracked speakers shook with sound. He was the one behind the broadcast. He had stitched together laughter from old recordings, mixed them with hidden signals, and sent them into the heart of the empire. Beside him, a woman stood quietly. Her name was Mira, a teacher who once told stories to children in secret. She looked worried. "Raffi," she whispered, "do you understand what you've done?" Raffi grinned, though his eyes showed fear. "I gave them a joke," he said. "Just a joke." Mira shook her head. "No, you gave them something more dangerous than fire. Because this laughter was not ordinary. It was crafted, shaped, and sharpened like a blade. It carried hidden rhythms that touched the mind, loosening fear, breaking chains of command. A soldier who laughed could not obey. A commander who smiled could not order death. It was the simplest weapon, and the most powerful. Back in the imperial city, panic spread. The emperor's advisors argued in low voices. "It is only sound," one said. "It is poison," another cried. "It weakens discipline. It must be silenced." Commander Lee clenched his fists. "Find the source. Crush it." But how do you crush a laugh? The next day, patrols entered a small village outside the city. They expected rebels, weapons, bombs. Instead, they found children standing in a circle, giggling. Their laughter echoed, like the broadcast, strange and contagious. The patrol tried to shout, tried to threaten, but one soldier began to smile. He dropped his rifle. Another joined him. Soon, the entire patrol sat on the ground, laughing with the children. The village was freed without a fight. News spread fast. Whispers traveled across the empire. The sound is hope, but whispers also traveled back to the emperor. The sound is rebellion. Mira begged Raffi to stop. "They will come for us," she said. "The empire does not forgive." Raffi looked at his console, at the blinking lights, at the power he held. "They will come anyway," he said softly. "At least now, we have something they cannot control." And he was right. In the deepest chambers of the palace, scientists gathered. They replayed the laugh again and again, trying to understand why it broke their focus. Some claimed it was a weapon. Others said it was madness, but none could explain why they, too, felt lighter when they heard it. Commander Lease did not laugh. He swore vengeance. "Trace it," he ordered. "I don't care how far. I want the world that dares mock the Empire. Find it, burn it." On the tiny planet, Raffi and Myra watched the Imperial newsfeed, and then Raffi's face turned pale. On the screen, the Empire's star charts flashed. His home planet's coordinates were marked in red. "They found us," Raffi whispered. Myra closed her eyes. The joke has started a war. The Empire had never feared sound before. They had crushed armies, silenced rebels, and burned cities. But now, they feared laughter. Everywhere, reports came in. Patrols froze when they heard the strange broadcast. Soldiers lost focus. Entire squads surrendered without a fight. The Empire called it the sickness of noise. Rebels called it the joke. On his small planet, Raffi worked day and night. His console buzzed with new recordings. Around him, young men and women crowded the studio. They were not fighters, not soldiers, but singers, clowns, and storytellers. Raffi showed them how to shape their voices, how to cut silence, how to stretch a laugh until it bent the mind. "Not all sound is equal," Raffi explained. "A sharp laugh can break attention. A soft giggle can slip past defenses. Timing is everything. We are not fighting with guns. We are fighting with rhythm." Mira watched them with worried eyes. She had been a teacher, and she knew the Empire would not stay silent. They were already planning revenge. And far away, inside the Empire's capital, Dr. Havel sat in a cold laboratory. He was one of the Empire's top scientists, a man who had spent years studying the brain. Now, his task was to understand this weaponized laughter. He replayed the recording again and again. His assistants brought soldiers into the lab, made them listen. Every time, the soldiers cracked. Some giggled, some burst into loud laughter. Others simply dropped their weapons and smiled as if they had forgotten the war. Dr. Havel frowned. "It is not poison. It is not hypnosis. It is something else." One night, alone in the lab, he let the recording play for too long. He felt his chest lighten, his lips curved upward. For a moment, he laughed. Then he stopped himself, sweating. He slammed the console shut. "This cannot be allowed," he muttered. "This sound will unmake the Empire." Meanwhile, the rebels trained in secret. They formed small groups, each carrying strange devices, speakers, recorders, sound bombs. They called themselves sound squads. Some practiced comedy routines, others sang in patterns, others used silence like a blade. Captain Jocks, a tall rebel with scars, did not believe in this new war. He had fought with real weapons all his life. He looked at Raffi with doubt. "You think a joke will stop the Empire's fleets?" he asked. Raffi answered calmly. "Not a joke, 1,000 jokes. A storm of them." Jocks shook his head. "Laughter cannot kill," Mira cut in softly, "but it can make killing impossible." The first test came in a prison. Rebels sneaked inside with a hidden speaker. A prisoner sat chained, his head low. Guards watched him with hard eyes. Then the hidden speaker turned on. A whisper of laughter filled the cell. The prisoner's lips twitched, then curved. Soon he was laughing, his chains rattling as his body shook. The guards frowned. One tried to silence him, but soon grinned himself. Another chuckled. Within minutes, the prisoner walked free, his guards laughing behind him. The Empire panicked. They sent spies. One spy, dressed as a street clown, joined a rebel crowd. He danced, he smiled, he listened. And when Raffi shook his hand, the spy slipped him a toy, a small wooden figure that made a strange squeak when pressed. Raffi laughed at the toy and pocketed it. He did not know it carried a tracker dot back in the capital. Dr. Hevel studied every new report. He noticed patterns. The sound worked best in groups, when people could see each other smile. He also noticed something else. It was not limited to humans. Even alien soldiers from other worlds broke down laughing when exposed. It was a weapon against all minds. The Emperor grew furious. "I want results, Doctor," he commanded. "You will break this sound, or you will be broken." And so, the Empire began to build countermeasures. They tested helmets that blocked sound. They built towers that spread silence fields, invisible waves that killed noise. But still, the laughter found ways through. A street show freed an entire city without firing a single shot. People began to whisper a dangerous idea. Maybe joy was stronger than fear, but joy also carried danger. Rebels started to feel too powerful. Some played with laughter carelessly, making people collapse in tears of joy that would not stop. Mira warned them. "Do not forget," she said, "this is not a game. Laughter is freedom, but too much can be chains of another kind." Raffi listened, but he was proud of what they had built. He believed they could win. He did not see the shadow watching him, the spy who had placed the tracker. That night, while Raffi worked late, he picked up the wooden toy and pressed it again. It squeaked. He smiled, not knowing the signal had already reached the Empires. Fleet. Far across the stars, Commander Lys received the location. His cold smile returned. "Prepare the ships," he said. "We will end their little joke." And as Raffi laughed at the toy, he did not know the Empire was already on its way. The rebel hideout buzzed with sound. Recordings played, laughter echoed, voices trained in rhythm and tone. Raffi sat in the center, guiding them like a conductor. For the first time in years, people were smiling while preparing for war. But outside, far above the clouds, silence was coming. Commander Lys's fleet moved across the stars, dark and quiet. No music, no voices. Not even the hum of engines reached open space. They carried a new weapon, silence towers. These machines could drain sound from entire cities. Laughter would vanish. Songs would choke before leaving the mouth. Inside the command ship, Dr. Hevel stood beside Lys. He watched the readouts carefully. "If this works," Hevel said, "there will be no more laughter. The rebels will lose their weapon, and if it fails," Lys asked coldly. Hevel hesitated. "Then even the Empire may laugh itself apart." Back on the rebel planet, Mira felt uneasy. She had been watching the night sky. Strange shadows moved between the stars. She rushed to Raffi. "They're coming," she warned. Raffi frowned. "Then we'll meet them with sound." The rebels gathered, sound squads ready. Speakers were loaded onto hoverbikes, sound bombs carried in backpacks. Captain Jocks, though still doubtful, stood beside them. "If the Empire comes," he growled, "we fight, no matter the weapon." And then the sky cracked open. Black ships descended like a storm. For a moment, the rebels cheered. They had beaten soldiers before. But then the silence towers activated. A wave spread across the land. At once, voices fell quiet. Laughter froze. In throats. Speakers coughed out nothing but dead air. Rebels opened their mouths, but no sound came. The world was wrapped in a heavy, crushing quiet. Myra gasped. She tried to call to Raffi, but no word escaped. Her lips moved, but silence swallowed everything. Panic spread. The rebels' strongest weapon was gone. Inside the command ship, Lys watched with satisfaction. "Look at them," he said. "Clowns without sound, songs without voice. They are finished." But Dr. Hevel was not smiling. He studied the silence field closely. His readings showed stress-like cracks forming in glass. He whispered to himself, "Silence cannot hold forever. Nature bends toward noise." On the ground, Raffi refused to give up. He looked around at the rebels, their eyes wide with fear. He grabbed a pen and scratched words onto a metal plate. If we cannot laugh, we will still move. He held the plate high. The rebels saw it. Slowly, they began to act without sound. A singer clapped her hands in rhythm. Others stamped their feet, their boots striking the ground in patterns. Even without voices, the rebels created a beat. Thump, clap, thump, thump, clap. The silence towers shook as the rhythm grew. Sound waves were blocked, but vibrations still carried. Laughter was gone, but joy was not. The rebels turned their bodies into instruments. Commander Lees frowned. What are they doing? Havel answered. They are adapting. They have not lost. Not yet. Anger flashed in Lees's eyes, increased the silence. The towers pushed harder, draining even the smallest sound. Birds fell quiet. Rivers ran without splash. The planet became a painting moving, but noiseless. For the rebels, breathing grew heavy. The silence pressed on their chests, making them feel small, trapped. Some collapsed in despair, but Rafi refused to fall. He placed his hand on Mira's shoulder. She looked at him, then began to draw in the dirt. Words formed. Silence is their weapon, but silence can break them too. Rafi's eyes widened. He understood. If silence was everywhere, then a single sound would shatter it like lightning in a dark sky. They needed one perfect strike. The rebels moved quickly. Jocks led a squad to hide sound bombs beneath the towers. Even without their laughter, their determination was strong. And then it happened. A small mistake. One Empire soldier laughed. He had slipped on the wet ground while adjusting his helmet. A tiny chuckle escaped his lips. Against the crushing silence, it echoed like thunder. The rebels froze. Then their eyes lit with hope. The towers cracked. Screens in Lisa's ship flashed. Warnings. Dr. Havel leaned closer. Do you see? Even silence cannot kill laughter completely. One sound is enough to start the storm. Rafi raised his hand, signaling the rebels. Jocks detonated the hidden bombs. A burst of sound ripped through the quiet. It was not laughter, not music, just noise. But against silence, it was victory. The towers trembled, their shields failing. Slowly, sound returned. First a gasp, then a cheer, then laughter louder than ever before. The Empire's troops stumbled, clutching their heads. The flood of sound overwhelmed them. Some tore off their helmets, others dropped weapons. Commander Lees roared in anger. Useless machines. Burn that planet to ash. But Dr. Havel spoke softly, almost to himself. No, you cannot burn laughter. You cannot kill sound. For the first time, he wondered if the Empire was already lost. On the battlefield, Rafi and Mira stood side by side, their voices returning. The rebels laughed not just for victory, but because silence had taught them something new. Their weapon was not only sound, but spirit. Yet even as they celebrated, Rafi felt uneasy. The Empire would not stop, and somewhere deep in his heart, he knew Dr. Havel was studying, learning. Silence had failed, but the next weapon might be worse. The war of laughter was only beginning. The Empire retreated, but the silenced towers left scars. Forests that once sang with birds now sounded empty. Rivers that once roared now whispered. Even though laughter had returned, people could still feel the shadow of silence. Rafi walked through the village ruins. Children laughed and played again, but the sound felt fragile, like glass ready to break. He turned to Mira. They will come back, he said. Yes, she answered, but next time we must be stronger. News of the rebels' victory spread across the galaxy. Other planets, tired of the Empire's rule, began to whisper stories of the laughing rebels. On hidden channels, songs were shared, songs forbidden by the Empire. Soldiers guarding city streets sometimes caught themselves smiling when they heard the echoes of rebellion. But inside the Empire's heart, Commander Lees raged. He had lost men, ships, and his pride. He blamed Dr. Hevel. You said silence would break them, Leash shouted. Hevel stood calm, his hands behind his back, and it almost did. But silence cannot last. It only prepares the ground for something. Louder Leash narrowed his eyes. Then find me something that lasts. A weapon that no laughter can resist. Hevel nodded slowly, though his mind was torn. Secretly, he admired the rebels' courage, but science was his prison, and Leash his guard. He began working on a new project, something darker, a machine that could twist sound itself. Back on the rebel planet, the leaders held council. Captain Jocks slammed his fist on the table. We got lucky. We hit them once, but next time, they'll be ready. Rafi leaned forward. It wasn't luck, it was laughter. They don't understand it, but we do. And now, we must spread it further. Mira smiled faintly. An echo, she said. Even when the sound is gone, the echo carries. The idea grew. The rebels would not just fight, they would echo. They began sending recordings across space. At first, short bursts of laughter, then full songs, then messages of hope. Across the stars, workers in mines heard the recordings and began to hum. Farmers under Empire patrols laughed quietly at night. Even soldiers, weary from endless orders, found comfort in secret echoes. The Empire tried to block the transmissions, but the echoes spread like wildfire. Every time they shut one down, two more appeared. It was no longer just a rebellion, it was a movement. But then came a warning. A spy from the Empire, disguised as a traitor, slipped into the rebel camp. Before he escaped, Mira caught him. They searched his belongings and found blueprints. The designs showed a weapon far worse than silence. It was called the Echo Breaker. Instead of removing sound, it would twist it. Laughter would become screams. Music would turn into chaos. Hope would shatter into fear. The council stared at the papers in horror. Jocks muttered, if they finish this, our songs will kill us. Rafi clenched his fists. Then we cannot wait for them to bring it. We must go to them. For the first time, the rebels planned an attack, not defense. They would strike the Empire before the Echo Breaker was ready. Night fell on the rebel planet. Fires burned low as preparations began. Fighters checked weapons, singers trained there. Voices, engineers, built portable sound shields. Children too young to fight drew pictures of stars and laughter, leaving them as charms for the soldiers. Mira sat with Rafi by the fire. Do you think we can win? She asked softly. Rafi looked at the sky. I don't know, but I know this: if we do nothing, laughter will die, and I would rather fight and fail than live in silence. Far away, Dr. Hevel worked in his lab, adjusting the Echo Breaker's core. He paused for a moment, staring at the flickering sound waves on his screen. Somewhere deep in his memory, he recalled a time long ago when he had laughed as a child. That small memory frightened him more than the rebels' weapons. Commander Lee stormed into the lab. How long until it's ready? Soon, Hevel answered, but his voice trembled. The rebels launched their ships. Small, fast, almost invisible, in the dark of space. They carried not only weapons, but sound recordings of laughter, ancient songs, voices of people who refused to be silent. As the rebel fleet crossed the stars, Mira whispered to herself, let our echoes reach them, let our echoes reach them, our voices be heard. The stage was set. The Empire waited with the Echo Breaker. The rebels carried the power of laughter. The next battle would not be fought only with fire and steel. It would be fought with echoes. The rebel fleet entered Empire's space like shadows, gliding across the stars. Their ships were small, but their mission was vast. Inside each vessel, speakers waited, loaded with recordings of laughter, songs, and voices of resistance. Rafi stood in the lead ship, staring at the giant fortress world ahead. Around its orbit shimmered the Empire's fleet, dark, sharp, and endless. And at the center, inside the main command ship, was the machine everyone feared, The Echo Breaker. Mira's voice came through the comms. They know we're here, Raffi nodded. Then let's make them listen. The rebels sent out their first wave. Across space, echoes burst, laughs, songs, chants. The Empire's radios filled with sound. For a moment, soldiers faltered, confused by the noise. Some even smiled, forgetting their orders. But then the fortress lit up. A deep hum spread across the void. The Echo Breaker had awakened. Inside his lab, Dr. Havel watched the machine activate. Sound waves twisted, reshaped into chaos. The rebels' laughter turned into screams. Their songs warped into screeches. Mira clutched her ears as her own voice playback stabbed her like knives. Across the fleet, panic began. Pilots shook in their seats, some losing control. Jox slammed his fist on his console. They've turned our strength into fear. Raffi gritted his teeth. No, we can't stop now. We fight with more. The rebels doubled their broadcasts. Louder, stronger. The Empire's fleet shook as two storms of sound clashed in the void, hope against fear. Laughter against screams. Commander Lee smiled coldly on his command bridge. Let them shout. My silence will win. But not all was silent inside the Empire. Dr. Havel stared at the screens, his hands trembling. He saw what the Echo Breaker was doing, not just to rebels, but to everyone. Empire soldiers screamed, too broken by twisted echoes. It was not a weapon of control, it was a weapon of ruin. And in that moment, Havel remembered a boy he once was, laughing under a tree before the Empire took him. His heart cracked. His chains of duty snapped. He turned on the machine's core panel and began to type, rerouting its flow. The Echo Breaker faltered. Its scream softened dot on the battlefield. Mira gasped. Something's changing. Raffi's eyes widened. Keep singing. Don't stop now. The rebels poured everything. They head into the void. Songs from miners, laughter from children, chants from villages long gone. The echoes grew. The Echo Breaker wavered. Inside the fortress, Commander Lee stormed into the lab. What are you doing? Havel turned to him, ending this. Lease drew his weapon, but before he could fire, the machine overloaded. A blinding wave of sound blasted through the command ship. Across the battlefield, silence fell. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then echoes, pure, unbroken, unstoppable. Laughter returned, spreading through every channel, every corner of space. Soldiers on both sides heard it and dropped their weapons. Some cried, some laughed, some simply stood still, overwhelmed. The Echo Breaker was destroyed. Raffi's ship shook, but it held. Myra's voice came weak but steady. We did it. No, Raffi said, his voice soft. He did it. News spread fast. The Empire had lost its great weapon. Commander Lease vanished in the chaos, his fleet scattered. And Dr. Havel, who had once built silence, was now remembered as the man who broke it. In the days that followed, planets across the galaxy rose up. The echoes the rebels sent had reached them all. The Empire was not gone yet, but it was broken, its grip forever. Weakened back on the rebel planet, fires burned bright in celebration. Children laughed freely, voices strong. The people sang songs that would never be silenced again. Myra sat under the stars with Raffi. So this is the end? She asked. Raffi shook his head. No, this is the beginning. Laughter is a seed. We've only planted it. Now it will grow. She smiled, leaning back to listen to the voices of her people. Voices that no machine could ever twist again. Far away, in the ruins of the fortress, echoes still lingered. Not screams, not silence, but laughter. Faint, but eternal. And the galaxy, for the first time in generations, dared to believe. The war had started with a joke, but it ended with an echo.